Hello, my friend, and welcome to the Phillip Mason Show, where acquiring wisdom is king and learning is lifelong and home-centered, resulting in great decisions in our education, career, and entrepreneurial path. I'm your host, Phillip Mason, and I am delighted to have this time with you today here in episode number 11. So today we're going to talk more in detail about step number 3 in acquiring wisdom. So there are 10 steps to acquiring wisdom, and I'll just review those here with you. These are fundamental to each of us developing that virtue of wisdom. So the first one is to humble yourself. The second is a willingness to learn. The third is be believing, which we're going to cover today. And then number 4 is to pivot in faith. Number 5 is deny yourself. Number 6 is serve to lift others. And number 7, live by virtue and truth. Number 8, be inquisitive. Number 9, develop your talents. And number 10, build a happy family. So those are the 10 steps to wisdom that are fundamental to developing the virtue of wisdom. So today I'm excited to talk with you about step number 3, and we're going to go through that in detail and talk about why having belief or being believing is so vital to our success in developing wisdom. So I want to start off by telling you a story about an experience that I had when I was working for a company. And I had this really great vice president that I worked for. His name was Mitch Wasden, and really fantastic guy, still one of the best guys I've ever met. And he had worked with the owners of the company and with other managers throughout the company to develop a process for the company that I worked for. And so they spent a lot of time gathering data, formulating principles, and seeing best practices and seeing what worked in each of the offices. And they came up with a really clear pattern for success for each of the offices. And they made it this company standard across the board. So when I came on board the company, I learned this process from Mitch. These were the best principles, and they were done in a very sequential order that was necessary for operations to be efficient and effective and ultimately to bless the lives of our customers. So I really took this process to heart that my company had, and I practiced it, I memorized it, I learned it, and I put a lot of effort into it. And over time, I was able to become a partner and be able to acquire my own offices. And the company actually moved me out to the East Coast, and I was practicing. And I had taken over these offices. They'd been struggling for a little while, and we started to have success. My offices were in the top 10% of the company and sometimes in the top 5%. And there was even a time or two where my offices were the number one office for that particular month. So it was really exciting to see that growth and development that those offices were experiencing. And ultimately, I was able to really help the customer, which was the most important thing. So I had this experience one day that was just really earth-shattering and life-changing for me. So my VP, Mitch, he had sent me an email to me and other directors out there in the field. And I had a quiet moment in between meetings. And so I was in my office, I'd closed the door, and I was just going to watch this video that he sent to us. So this video was actually a 60 minutes spotlight show of Nick Saban, who was the legendary coach for the Alabama Crimson Tide football team. And in this 60 minutes clip, they're interviewing him, and he's telling them about the process that he has. And so he preaches to his football players that if you follow this process, you will eventually become a great team. You'll become a great player. And so he teaches them not to focus on the score, but to focus on the process, improving their game, making it as good as they possibly can. So regardless if they're losing or if they're winning, they're not worried about the scoreboard. They're worried about playing the best football they possibly can. And as I watched this video, I had this epiphany. I had this kind of awakening that my belief in this process that my company had put together, my belief in the principles that were outlined in this process, my belief in my boss, my belief in myself was what was enabling me to have success in my offices and have success with my customers. And as I was watching this video, emotionally, I just lost it because I just realized how true this was. The truth of it just struck me. And I just started crying and bawling in my office. And I just kind of had this moment of realization. And it was super humbling for me to realize that I'd been working so hard and I'd put so much belief and faith into this process. And to see the fruits of it was just incredibly rewarding. And it just brought me a lot of joy. And I was excited and happy all the same time. And I was just crying. And I remember like drying my eyes before I went back out into the hallway before I interacted with any of my team. I didn't want them being too worried about me. But it was a really powerful experiment and in my life, and to be able to see the fruit of that experiment was really wonderful. So I'm grateful for that roadmap that my vice president has shown me that allowed me to get to a successful destination, just like Nick Saban had showed a roadmap to his team of principles that they should be following in order to be a great football team, a great football player. And one of the things that was really fascinating to me as I was reflecting back over my experience working in these offices is the power of belief. And I noticed that when I really believed in the process and I really adhered to it, I saw a lot of success. However, when I began to diminish in my belief or I didn't follow it as closely as I should, perhaps maybe I got a little lazy or a little complacent, or maybe I thought maybe I had a better way of doing things, I noticed that my success actually started to diminish. Things in the office started to go down financially, and the success that my customers were having was actually going down as well too. They corresponded. And sometimes this happened when I focused too much on the score and not enough on the process. And and all of this I realized was directly connected to my belief in the process. And when I had a belief in the principles that were embodied in that process, that's when I was successful. That's when my customers were successful and everything started going my way. But as soon as I stopped believing in them or stopped putting emphasis in them, that's when my success started going down. So belief is a lot like a thermometer. You know, you get more and more belief, the heat goes up, the mercury goes up, right? And I also noticed with belief that when I would soften my heart and I would soften my mind, so to speak, and was more open to the process, that's when that belief became possible. And I also noticed a corollary where as I was believing allowed my mind to be free and open. And once my mind was free and open, then I could really serve with my heart and I could serve with passion and with purpose. And the customers picked up on that and responded really well to the feeling and heart that I gave them. So this experience really helped me realize that this phenomenon was the power of belief. I really like the French philosopher Blaise Pascal. He's a great scientist, great thinker. But he's one of those that kind of pinpointed that belief is an intellectual exercise. And that power of belief, it really unlocks our potential and it unlocks our ability to use our hearts in conjunction with our minds and to use that principle of faith. It's a power that we have as human beings to exercise faith and to accomplish amazing things. And once we have both our hearts and our minds working together, it creates tremendous power, tremendous motivation. But the key to all this is that our minds can be the roadblock to our hearts, to our success. And so if we're not believing, if we haven't overcome that mental roadblock and we've stopped believing in ourselves and the principles in the process, whatever it is, that inhibits us from growing and developing in faith. There's another great philosopher, David Hume, the British philosopher and writer. He actually wrote this huge document, this book called A Treatise of Human Nature. And in one particular section of his book that he wrote, this is actually book 1, section 4, paragraph 6, he actually talks about the connection or association of ideas in our mind. And really what he's talking about is the power of belief through those connection of ideas to unlock action in our lives. So without that belief, faith is impossible. Now, it's kind of interesting. I'll actually read this section from David Hume in his treatise, but he talks about the principle of attraction is what he refers to it as. And he's got it in all caps in his book, Attraction. So I'll read this to you. So he's talking about the connection or union between are simple ideas that we have. And sometimes when we have those simple ideas that come together and they correspond in our minds, there's a powerful synergy that takes place there. And he says our imaginations see how those ideas can grow and spawn and expand into something new and wonderful. And so he refers to this as attraction to great things, great ideas. And he says our memories hold on to those and they become very powerful in our memories. So this is what he says. Here is a kind of attraction which in the mental world will be found to have as extraordinary effects as in the natural or outside in the natural world around us, outside of our minds. And to shew itself as in many, as various, and to shew itself in as many and as various forms. Its effects are everywhere conspicuous. But as to its causes, they are mostly unknown and must be resolved into original qualities of human nature, which I pretend not to explain. So it's kind of interesting here. He's recognizing this phenomenon of belief in the human brain, in the human mind. And he is saying it's real, it's powerful. And when our imagination, when we make the connection of two ideas and they come together, our minds, our imaginations can use those to see what's possible when those two ideas come together. And we create a vision of what's possible. And our memories love that connection. When two ideas come together, our memories hold on to that. They latch onto it and they won't let go of it. Our belief comes out of that connection in our brains that our imagination uses and it cements it into our memory. And that's the power of belief. So we know through brain science that a lot of this is true with the neuron pathways. And when two different ideas come together, a new neuron pathway is actually created. And it's interesting to me that David Hume, a long time ago, he wrote this, but he recognized this phenomenon of belief and of two ideas coming together to create a powerful spark in our imagination, which cements this belief in our memory. A lot of times today, gurus refer to this as the law of attraction. And I really believe that the law of attraction is essentially our belief and our faith. And so when we talk about the law of attraction, we're really talking about belief and faith being coupled together. And you can't have the faith without the belief. So they go hand in hand. It's like reading and writing. You really can't have one without the other. You need to have both of them. They're both vital. So I love that from David Hume. I think that's incredibly powerful. I want to go back to Pascal for a moment now. So Pascal, he gave this wager, and basically he outlines this better to believe than not to believe. So using probability theory, he charts that out. And that really should be the case for us on all sorts of things. It's better to believe than not to believe. If anything along the way, we can disprove a previous belief that we held. And that's okay. We can do that. But it's better to believe and to have that be as the building blocks for moving forward to gain new knowledge, new understanding, and to acquire wisdom. And that's where it becomes really critical. So Pascal, in his work, Pensée, he says our beliefs are often built upon reason and custom and inspiration. Those are the three building blocks of our belief that are really common. And he says that oftentimes our senses and our ability to reason and our experience have limits to them. So we have senses, right? We can touch, we can smell, we can see, we can hear, but all of our senses have limits to them. They can only detect so much. And, we reach a point where we have sensory overload or we just cannot pick up or understand what's being perceived by our senses. We also have our ability to reason. We can use our minds. Like the ancient Greeks were really known for their ability to reason and to process things out. But our thoughts have limits to them, is what Pascal says. And Pascal also says our experience, what we go through in life, pulls in information and helps us learn new things. But even our experience has limits, right? Each human being has different experiences, and those experiences are all very unique, and we're limited to what we've experienced. So our senses, reason, and then experience, all three of those have limits to them. And so we're blessed with this ability to believe in something. And so belief is this superpower that we have that allows us to see around the corner, to see around the bend, and to be able to discover what's on the other side of that wall. or to discover what is beyond that mountain on the other side of the valley, and to be able to look beyond the moon and to have a vision of what possibly might be beyond the moon. And this is the power of the imagination to be able to help us develop a vision of what might be out there. So belief is the ability to use our imagination to be able to understand that something actually exists out there that is true. So belief allows us to imagine that something is true and really exists, even though our senses, our reason, and our experience suggest to us that they're not so, or that because we haven't detected them, they can't be so. So belief really gives birth to vision. And we need belief to be able to establish that vision of what it is that we hope to see, or we know that is true, but we haven't been able to see it or perceive of it yet or experience it yet. And we want to have that vision. And so belief gives us a vision. And when people don't have a vision, their lives start falling apart. They're just existing when they don't have a vision. People who have a belief of what they can become, they start to have a vision of what it is that they see themselves becoming. And that's a tremendous superpower to have. So let me give you an example of this. My brother Ryan had a determination to be a really great runner, and he wanted to be the best runner at his middle school. And so as a sixth grader, he started running, and he would run around our block, and he'd do this in the evening times after school, and he would run as fast as he could around our block. And he would do this over and over again every evening. He had a habit of doing this. And this went on for years. And so when he got to the seventh grade, so his coach was having them do a practice run with his whole team in preparation for the mile run coming up that they were going to perform at one of the track meets. And so the coach has him goes off, he's timing him on his stopwatch. And when my brother crosses the finish line, he hits the button, and the coach cannot believe his eyes. He has a seventh grader that's just run a 4:55 mile time, 4 minutes and 55 seconds as a seventh grader, and his coach's mind is totally blown. Um, but he's never seen a seventh grader run a mile time that fast. And so my brother went on to win every single track event that he went into. When cross country came around, he won every single cross country meet that he participated in by wide margin. And so he had this phenomenal seventh and eighth grade year in track and field. And he fulfilled this vision that he had, this belief that he had that he could become a very powerful runner, to become the best runner in his area. And he did that. He completed that. And that's because he had this belief in himself that he could do it. He had this vision of himself being able to cross that finish line and be the best that he can. Even though he was very young, being a middle schooler, he's still, that belief is what powered him and motivated him to get out and to run and to improve himself. And so when we have this vision of what we can become, when we believe that it's possible for us to do something, it shapes our character and molds it in such a way that we get out there and make things happen, and our faith starts to move, and we pivot towards a better future where we achieve and we accomplish, where we become successful. So we still talk about my brother's physical feats, his athletic feats from in middle school times. It was absolutely a phenomenal time. He had every high school coach drooling. So that's a good example of how belief can shape your outcome, can shape your character. So I have a favorite quote, and it actually comes from a Scottish philosopher and explorer. He was a famous mountaineering explorer. His name was W.H. Murray, and he wrote a book. And in this book, he has this quote, and he actually borrows from the German philosopher and writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. And it comes from Faust Part 1 of his play. So I'm going to read the part that Murray writes, and then I'm going to read the part that's from Faust that von Goethe writes. So this is the quote. So listen carefully to this, because it's talking about commitment, but belief is really our mental commitment to the reality of a truth or the reality of a principle. And when we believe, we're really committing our minds to follow through on something that we validate as truth. So this is what he says: until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth: that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. So that's from Murray. And now from von Goethe, whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So I love that quote. I think it's just so powerful. And when we believe, we can break through the ice of uncertainty. It's like Pascal discovered, it's better to believe than to not to believe. When we believe, that's when things really start moving forward, when life starts becoming exciting, and when we see all the possibilities. And by believing, we unlocked the vehicle within us to be able to exercise faith that helps us test and demonstrate that the principles that we believe to be true actually and indeed are true, and we validate them as we move forward in faith. And we can't actually know the truth unless we start believing. So that's why it's so important for us to be believing, is so we can actually discover what the truth is. And so I think that's why, W.H. Murray, von Goethe, David Hume, Blaise Pascal, I think that's why some of their thoughts are so important, is because they recognize that we have, as human beings, there's something really special about us. And certainly artificial intelligence does not have the power of belief like we do, and the power of faith like we do. But when we believe something, it unlocks a tremendous power within us to accomplish great things and to move mountains. And I really believe that. So my friend, it's been an absolute pleasure for me to be with you today. I hope that you'll have an earnest desire to have a believing mind and to open your heart and to exercise faith because of that believing mind that you've cultivated. I hope these thoughts have served you well today and have opened up a great well of motivation and hope for you by having a believing mind. And we will catch you on the next episode of the Phillip Mason Show. Until then, my friend, be believing.